Hi everybody, I'm Mike Morgan, one of the safety monitors in the wood shop. My partner Bill Drury, who's behind the camera, and I are going to review for you in this video the steps to be taken when you are called upon to change a blade in the bandsaw. Now we have 4 different bandsaws. Each of them works slightly differently, so I'll be going over the general principles that apply to all, but when you come to a particular saw, you'll have to figure out for yourself exactly how the details work. I'll try to give you as much guidance as I can here. Of course, in any instance where you're changing a blade, the first step is to de-energize the tool, and we'll do that by rotating the plug slightly counterclockwise and pulling it out. With the tool de-energized, we'll open the 2 doors covering the wheels. Swing the fence track out and release the tension on the blade by turning this overhead knob counterclockwise. It takes several turns. And now the blade is loose. I think I can wiggle it off the top wheel. Thread it out of the guide, and we've now removed the blade. Now the old blade is off, it's a good time to go through the recommended procedure for coiling the blade into a triple coil. Now this takes practice, so I don't expect you'll be able to do this the first time. But the idea is to grab the back side of the blade in the palms of your hands with your hands spaced about 1/3 of the way around the circumference. So then we stabilize the far side of the blade by holding it against some solid object while I bring my palms up and cross them. And you can see that the blade is forming a curled shape, and all of a sudden I've got 3. Before installing a new blade, it's first necessary to move each of the guide assemblies as far aft as possible so that they are at the back of the blade relative to you, the user, and won't interfere with the teeth as we set the new blade up. So in order to move the assemblies aft or back, we have to release the thumb screw and slide the entire assembly as far back as possible. So now it's well back. The same must be done on the lower unit, and in this particular saw that requires a 10mm wrench to loosen this set screw. Someone's gotten it on pretty tight. There we go. So we're again sliding the entire assembly as far aft as possible. Now we're ready to install the new blade, so here it is. Someone has very kindly coiled it in triplicate for me. And one thing to watch out for is when you uncoil that blade, it actually is possible to get it upside down. You want to make sure by holding it up in the final configuration that the teeth are actually facing down. Because if you invert the ribbon, the teeth will be facing up. That's entirely possible to do, and I've made that mistake. All right, we've got it in the correct orientation. The idea now is to open up the track for the fence again and carefully thread the saw in through the upper guard, over the top of the wheel, down through the slot on the left, and guide it carefully onto the lower wheel. And you can see that the saw blade is entirely clear of both guides, so there's no interference from the guides at this point. Place the saw blade roughly on the center of the tire, and you do that by feel. So I'm moving it back and forth until the blade is approximately in the center of both the top and the bottom tire. And we're still nicely clear of the guides. And retighten the tension gradually, not too far, just enough to keep the blade in place while we test for tracking. Still need to increase the tension a bit. And the blade is gradually moving backwards, aft again, so we've got to stop that. And to do that, we'll need to make an adjustment on the back of the saw. Now that I've got the tracking set approximately by adjusting the angle of the wheel, I'm going to increase the tension on the blade to nearly the final setting and review the tracking again by manually rotating the wheel and watching the blade, and I can see that it is stable. It's no longer wobbling back and forth. It's in a stable position on the tire, and that's what we want. Final adjustment of blade tension requires, again, turning this wheel carefully and slowly while we watch the tension gauge, which the company has kindly provided on this tool. Blade tension depends on the width of the blade. This blade is 3/8 inch wide. That's about 9.5 millimeters. So I'm going to adjust the wheel until the pointer on the gauge here points at the number 10 for 10 millimeters. Now we've got the correct amount of tension. The next step is to bring the guide assemblies forward one at a time. I'm doing the upper one now. Bring them forward until the side guides are aligned with the gullet. The point is, you do not want the side guides so far forward that they interfere with the teeth of the blade. So when they're in the correct position, tighten down the thumb screw to hold them there at the gullet. And we'll do the same thing with the lower guide, bringing the entire assembly forward until the side guides are just aligned with the bottom of the gullet, and then tighten that in position with the 10 millimeter wrench. The next step is to bring the thrust bearing out against the back edge of the saw blade. This guide should just clear the saw. In other words, when the blade is moving, the guide should not turn. So we're just about in the right place right now. Then we bring the side guides into near contact with the blade, adjusting them so that there's just enough clearance that they're not contacted by the blade, maybe a little closer than that. So I can move the blade right and left a little bit, and then we'll tighten them in place with these collar nuts like that. Once the guides are set, it's good to do a full revolution or two of the wheel and watch what's happening just to make sure that the blade is not moving front and back and is not making contact with any of those three guides. And it looks like we've got it about right. The same thing will have to be done on the upper guide with exactly the same adjustments. So we'll close the doors. And it's always wise to do a power-up test now, so I'm going to re-energize the saw. And what we'll hope to hear is no metal-on-metal screeching type noises. Ah, that's nice. So we've now completed our installation of the new blade.